Welcome to another video on web development with Flask and Python. My name is Ronak Vyas and this video is a collaboration with Programming Knowledge. In the previous video, we talked about an introduction to Flask and also saw what the final project is going to look like. In this video, we'll set up the base and develop a hello world using Flask and also see how our directory structure or how our folder for Flask application looks like. So just before we start coding up our web application and also start the basics of Flask, let's just see how the final web application looks like again. So this is how it looks like. We are going to make a push-ups logger to implement basic functionalities for web, which is one, CRUD, create, update, and delete, where users can create or add new workouts, update the workouts, and also delete them. This is the idea is similar to what the Flask documentation provides as a tutorial, which is making a blogging application. So since all the tutorials on the internet are about making a blog using Flask, I have just made a few changes in the idea where instead of writing a blog, you log your push-ups or workouts because during this quarantine, I need something to track my workouts, and this is a very simple idea to do so, and also helps me learn about Flask much easily. The second thing is user authentication, where you can add or sign up as a user and also log in, track your own personal workouts, and then log out. So this is what we'll be building. This is how the final application looks like, and we'll be developing the entire thing from scratch. Now let's get started. Let me just close my application, the one which we had made. So in the previous episode, we made a folder inside our directories, where inside this folder will be having all of our files. And let's just see, we are there. Okay, so we are inside that, or just one structure before that, and let's open this up. So I've opened this up using VS Code, but you can use any uh, code editor or text editor you want to use. I'm comfortable with VS Code, so I'll be using that during my entire tutorial. So uh, we see here that we can just develop, something called as a hello.py application file, where we just directly code up our application and start the server running. But since this is not going to be your, you know, just a very basic Flash tutorial, we'll be actually developing a project. So we'll be doing everything in a way a project should look like. So we'll be having files which only handle user authentication. We'll have files which only handle, the create, update, delete functionality, and everything will be fragmented and like a professional project which you can put up on your resume. So we'll not be following the usual way how Flask applications are built. There's nothing wrong with this. This can be completely done. As a Flask says, it offers suggestions, but does not force anything on you. It is not opinionated. So you can make your Flask applications any way you like. I'll be showing it the way I prefer it or the way I'm comfortable using it, because it helps me debug the errors pretty quickly. So, and during the course of building the web application, we'll be going through some concepts in Flask, which we'll be talking about. So let's get started. So the first thing, instead of making a hello.py, we'll be making an init.py. So let's just go ahead and make that first, and then we can talk about how to do it. So let me just set up my VS Code again. I was throwing in some errors, that's fine. And go back. So we'll talk about why we went back to our parent directory and not inside this in a second. But let's start. Let's make a new file, init.py. It has two double underscores before and after the name. And this is going to be the first file in the project that runs whenever you run the project. So whenever you run the project, this is the first file that is going to run. That is why it's called the init.py, or the initial file that runs. Don't worry about the .vs code folder here. It only deals with the environment I'm using and other such basic functionalities, and only focus on init.py. So let's first import Flask. So from Flask, import the Flask class. That is the first thing which we do. Next, we are going to make something called as a create app function. So this is a function for which the name has to be create app because it is given by Flask. We're going to override that to make our own application. So first, let's make an instance of our application. So app is going to be Flask, and the name parameter which is going to be the name of our project, which will be if not related, and we're going to just return the instance. So this is a very simple basic structure of our application. We cannot run the application yet, but this shows how to import Flask and create an application using init.py. Every project which becomes very complicated as we go requires fragmentation and dividing them into different files which handle each feature singularly. So init.py will deal with everything that has to be set up only once. So setting up the instance, we'll be doing that only once. We'll be setting up the database once, and also the login features at once for each instance. So all the user ID codes and setting up the database, the code for that will be inside this init.py file. And now let's go ahead and set up the main function. So let's start by setting up the directory structure. So what we have two functionalities. We have CRUD, which is create, update, delete functionalities, and we have our authentication functionality, which is logging in a user, signing up, logging out, etc. So we need two files. One which handles the create, update, delete, which is the main feature. So we'll call that main.py. And the second thing which we want is for authentication. So auth.py. So these two files will be main.py will be handling the create, update, delete, or showing the home page and the profile page, all those sorts of features. And auth.py will deal with logging in and how to log in, how to sign up, etc. Let's focus on main.py and set up our hello world for now. So let's import Flask. Let's use Flask to import some basic things which we need. So we need something called as blueprint, which we'll talk about in a second, and render template. So first, we're going to initialize this main file as a part of our Flask application. So main equal to blueprint main and the project name, which is name. Now, what is blueprint in Flask? So blueprint is a way to actually organize your files inside a Flask project. So I want my Flask structure to know that everything inside main has a name, main blueprint, and all the files and all the functions inside this file will be accessed through the blueprint for main. So if I have an index function, if I have a profile function which handles all the profile information, I can access that anywhere in the Flask structure using main.index or main.profile. So I'm setting up a blueprint for my Flask project, and for that, Flask provides you a blueprint function for you to do so. Now we need a decorator for every single Flask function we make. So we have the main, because we have a main blueprint here, and we route it to home. So this is a decorator which overrides some functionalities for your own application. I'll give you a link down below to understand how decorators work by this YouTuber called as Korisha Fair. He has a tutorial on Flask on how to build a blog using Flask, and also how decorators work. So let's make up our index function or the home and just return hello world for now. And we have our hello world ready, but it's not quite done yet. We want our application to talk or communicate with main.py, right? We want our application to find something called as main.py when the application runs. So the first file which runs when you have when you run the project is init.py, right? So let's give it, let's communicate with main.py using something called as register blueprint. So we go to from dot main. So this is where our main file is. We import main, which is the name here. We import this instance of the blueprint, and this is a main blueprint. So let's give it a name for readability. We'll be focusing on code readability and following good practices along the way. So make sure that you do that as well. And let's register our blueprint. So we use register blueprint and main underscore blueprint. Now we have registered our blueprint and we can run the hello world application, but we'll just go a one step further and make sure we have all our functions ready. So this is going to be our main function or the home page for our website, and now we'll go and set up a profile link. So main.route is going to be profile, where you can see the profile of a person, and we'll call it a profile as well. And let's just return something called as profile here for now, and we're good to go. Now we have very simple basic functionalities ready here, which is the home page and the profile page. And let's set up the authentication routes as well. So sorry about that. From Flask, import blueprint. Again, we have to have an authentication blueprint as well, and render template. We'll talk about render template in a minute, how to actually show HTML pages using Flask. But for now, let's set up our auth blueprint. The name is auth as the name of the file, and the name of the project, which is by underscore name. Now we'll have an auth route here, or dot route, and we need something called a sign up first. Define sign up, and for now let's just return something called as this page will be used to sign up users. And now after signing up, they have to log in. So let's make a login page. Again, auth.route, and my bad, it has to be after a slash. That's going to be a next page, login, and let's return that this page will be used to log in users. And just give it a full stop because I want to. And now that users have signed up and logged in, the next thing which they can do is log out. So let's give them a way to do this as well. So use this to log out. For now, we're just printing text on the web page, nothing else. We haven't started printing HTML pages yet. We'll do that in a minute. For now, we'll just print up text messages on the screen because we're going to set up a hello world for now, and also set up the directory structure. So as you can see, we have two files, main, which talks about how to, which talks about the main features, which is create applications, which we'll talk about in a minute, and also the home file and the profile. And we have the auth page, which deals with only signing up, logging in, logging out, etc., etc. So yeah, I think we're done. Now we have to make the auth.py page communicate with the project. So we do the same thing here as we did for main. From .auth, import auth as auth blueprint, app.register blueprint auth. And now our application is ready to run, to just run a hello world application. So before we do that, I'll be skipping some concepts here, explaining some pretty simple Python concepts. So make sure that you have some experience with Python before you jump on to building web applications using it. So I'll be skipping some Python concepts. For example, dot main. What does dot main mean here? So dot means the current structure, the current place in the tree. So dot is where all the init auth main files are on the same level, and main is the file which is inside of that structure. So main, so dot main is that. So such simple concepts which I will not be explaining, which you can just go ahead and Google search it. So yeah, so let's just make sure that everything is correct and in the place. So init.py runs your file, the first file which it runs. We create an instance of a Flask app. We connect our main.py page and our odd.py page and return the app. We'll talk about why it has to be named create app only in a minute. We have main.py, so we set up the main blueprint. We haven't used render template yet, but we will be using it in some time. We have our routes, so first the home route or just slash, which is hello world. Again, we have profile where we can see the profile. In auth, we have a sign up, login, and logout. Now let's see how we can run this project. So go to your uh, terminal or a command prompt, see where your folder is. So inside this folder we have our files, but go back a bit and type this. So export Flask app equal to your folder name. So push ups logger. So what just happened? Why did we do this? So export Flask app is an environment variable, a Flask app, which is given by Flask when you pip install Flask, and this sets up the behind the scenes for you, how the WSGI or the web server gateway interface works, how to run the application. So usually you just create a app.py file or hello.py file, not an any.py, and you have this functionalities there. But since we are going to set up a entire project, we have our project name pushups logger, and Flask automatically looks for the create app function inside init.py and sets up everything for you. So now all you have to do is do Flask run, and your website will be running. And we can go to this point and see whether it's running or not. Yes, as you can see, we have hello world here. Then let's go to profile and see what happens. So profile is here. We have sign up. So again, used to sign up and log in and log out. Yes, so our website is up and running. Perfect. My debug mode is on, so there is a way to do it. We'll talk about this in the next video, how to have a debug mode on. What does a debug mode mean? But for now, let's just skip this. You might not have this debugger message here, but go with it now. Close the application using Control C only, because we have to close the port 5000 when we do it. And now let's see what render template is all about. So render template is used to actually show up HTML files using Flask. And how do we do that? So first we need a folder with name templates. The name of the folder has to be templates. Inside that we need some files. So we need let's say index.html for our main file. We need login.html. We need sign up.html, and we don't need a logout.html for now. We'll talk about that later, for why don't we need a logout.html, because we don't show a page for logging out. We just click a button and it logs us out and sends us back to the index.html file. So yeah, now we have our templates ready, and let's actually set up profile again, profile.html. Now let's render them, or let's just write some really simple functions. So home page, then sign up will have a sign up heading. Simple heading is to make sure that it works. Log in and profile. So now let's render them. So to render them, we use when we return something, we return the render template and the name, so index.html. We do the same for all the other return values. So this is going to be profile.html, and for auth this is going to be sign up, and for login it's going to be login. Yes, so now we have set up our HTML files, and we have our basic render template functions ready. Let's use them now. Use Flask run. and everything is working properly. Let's go to the home page again, and as you can see, the h1 tag has been rendered, so the HTML is working with your files. So this is how we make a hello world in a project manner, not a simple hello world, but how we can do it for a project. So we have our init.py, which is the first file that runs when you run the project, when you do Flask run. It sets up your Flask instance behind the scenes. It registers main, so that is where you can see the main functions and also the auth functions. We have used Blueprint to do that, and to render the templates for HTML, we use the render template function. And we just printed the hello world for now, but in the next video we'll set up more. We'll talk about what is Ginger templating, how to set up Bootstrap, etc., etc. So yeah, let's see you in the next video. Thank you.